Siya Philip E. Vasquez. I am here because I want to share to you the beautiful story of Helen Keller. Helen Keller, in full Helen Adams Keller, born June 27, 1880, Tuscumbia, Alabama, U.S., died June 1, 1968, Westport, Connecticut. American author and educator who was blind and deaf. Her education and training represent an extraordinary accomplishment in the education of persons with these disabilities. Keller was afflicted at the age of 19 months with an illness, possibly scarlet fever, that left her blind and deaf. She was examined by Alexander Graham Bell at the age of 6. As a result, he sent to her 20-year-old teacher, Anne Sullivan Massey, from the Perkins Institution for the Blind in Boston, which Bell's son-in-law directed. Sullivan, a remarkable teacher, remained with her Keller from March 1887 until her own death in October 1936. Within months, Keller had learned to feel objects and associate them with words spelled out by finger signals on her palm, to read sentences by filling raised words on cardboard, and to make her own sentences by arranging words in a frame. During 1888 to 90, she spent winters at the Perkins Institution learning. She wrote of her life in several books, including The Story of My Life, 1903, Optimism, 1903, The World I Live In, 1908, Light in My Darkness, and My Religion, 1927, Helen Keller's Journal, 1938, and The Open Door, 1957. In 1913, she began lecturing with the aid of an interpreter, primarily on behalf of the American Foundation for the Blind, for which she later established a $2 million endowment fund, and her lecture tours took several times around the world. At age 14, she enrolled in the Wright Humason School for the Deaf in New York City, and at 16, she entered the Cambridge School for Young Ladies in Massachusetts. She won admission to Radcliffe College in 1900 and graduated cum laude in 1904. Having developed skills never approached by any similarly disabled person, Keller began to write of blindness, a subject then taboo in women's magazines because of the relationship of many cases to venereal disease. Edward W. Book accepted her articles for the Ladies' Home Journal and other major magazines. The Century, McClure's, and the Atlantic Monthly followed suit. Keller's childhood training with Sullivan was depicted in William Gibson's play The Miracle Worker 1959, which won the Pulitzer Prize in 1960 and was subsequently made into a motion picture 1962 that won 2 Academy Awards. She co-founded the American Civil Liberties Union with American civil rights activists Roger Nash Baldwin and others in 1920. Her efforts to improve treatment of the deaf and the blind were influential in removing the disabled from asylums. She also prompted the organization of commissions for the blind in 30 states by 1937.
Lights, camera, rolling, action.
All right. Pump. No, she's not here. Pump. W-A-T-E-R, water. It has a name. W-A-T. Whoa! 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 Yes. Yes. Oh, my dear. Round. Yes. Pump.
Now, let's move on the moral lesson of her story. There are a lot of lessons I gained from her story. I learned how to respond to social cases and special types of students that I soon to be encountered. I learned that patience is a virtue. I learned that teaching a student with or without sensory impairments should require the collaborative participation of their teacher, the school, and the community. I learned that as a teacher, I should let my students to do and experience things so that they can understand. I learned that learning is a process. I learned some teaching strategies like hand spelling, things have names, orienting the sensory impaired learner about the unseen environment, like letting a sensory impaired learner to use sense of touch as a substitute for the lost sensory. Encouraging the sensory impaired child to be independent as often as possible and avoid the trap of learned helplessness. Ultimately, I learned that all things can be learned. And that's all. Thank you for watching.